Okay, good morning, everyone. We have somebody downstairs.
I don't think that person's left again.
Oh, okay. A couple of you are new, so you're parachuting into the middle of a series of teachings, but they're recorded on YouTube, so you can go back and listen to them. So right now we're studying what's called the 5 indriyas, or the 5 controlling faculties. And indriya comes from the word Indra, which is the name of the Vedic god. The Vedic religion was the religion that sort of preceded Hinduism in India. And the god Indra was one who controlled or had power. And so these 5 indriyas are qualities that sort of control how quickly we move along the Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path is the path that the Buddha described as the steps to the end of suffering. And if these indriyas are weak, then we're going to travel along that path in a slow manner. And if they're strong, then we're going to travel along that path in a faster manner. So these are important qualities to know about. Now the Buddha, yes, so that's my next phrase here, which I was getting ahead of myself, that said that there are 4 ways to travel the Noble Eightfold Path: slow and easy, slow and difficult, fast and easy, and fast and difficult. And so if we have these 5 indriyas strongly, if these qualities are strong within our practice, then we're going to travel the path in a fast manner. If they're weak, it's going to be slow. And I'm assuming that whether it's easy or difficult depends on our karma. And I want you all to notice that the Buddha only gave 4 ways to travel on the path. He did not give 5 ways. He did not give a 5th way, saying that some people are incapable of traveling the path. He's saying everybody is capable. And in the teachings, he gives all kinds of examples of people in extreme situations, like mass murderers, or people who are just incredibly depressed because they've lost everyone in their families almost overnight, where a child has died, or all kinds of people in very extreme circumstances who became fully awakened. So the message is, you can do it. It may be slow, it may be difficult, but you can do it. And if we focus on these 5 indriyas, maybe we can do it in a little bit more of a quick manner. So the 5 indriyas are faith, energy, mindfulness, samadhi, which is translated as stillness or quieting or convergence or unification of the mind. And another word for samadhi are the jhana states. And then wisdom. So those are the 5 indriyas: faith, energy, mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom. So today we're focusing on the 3rd one, mindfulness. And the Pali term for this is Sati. Now, mindfulness, its meaning is in 2 parts. So the part that we mostly know about is being mindful of the present moment, being aware, knowing what's going on in this moment. So that's one aspect of the definition of mindfulness. But the other part to it is memory. remembering what are the teachings of the Buddha, because in any given moment, there's a lot of things going on. You're seeing things, you're hearing things, you're thinking things, smelling, tasting, touching things. So you've got a big choice of what you're going to focus on. And especially when it comes to the mind, because our mind can be very prolific, can be throwing up tons of different things for us to focus on. So it's important that we remember what the teachings are so that we know what's skillful. What is the wise thing to put our attention on in this moment? So mindfulness is being aware of the present moment, but remembering the teachings. So you're knowing what in the present moment to focus on. The definition of unwise attention is any attention that gives rise to the hindrances, to suffering. So wise attention is focusing on the antidotes to the hindrances, or on any wholesome object. Now, further to the definition of mindfulness, when the Buddha uses the word sati, which means mindfulness, he's referring to how we focus, the four broad areas that we can focus our attention. And he talks about this in the 4 focuses of mindfulness meditation, and that's called the Satipatthana Sutta. This sutta, this teaching, sutta means teaching. So this teaching on where we place our attention. Some people were confused and thought that this sutta was about how to be mindful, and no, it's not. This sutta is assuming you're already mindful, and now this sutta is telling you these are the four major areas where you can place your mindfulness. So it's assuming that mindfulness is already being developed. And we've given talks before on the gradual training. So our mindfulness is built up with this gradual training. And if you're not familiar with this concept, on the teachings menu on our website, I think it's the first category, basic teachings. There's 3 articles that sort of talk about this. Okay, so the 4 big focuses are the physical body, our feeling tone. Feeling tone is sort of a more, it's not the elaborated feelings of anger and love and joy and things like this. It's just this very sort of primitive, immediate emotional reaction to whatever sensory experience we're having. So if you hear something, there's going to be an immediate liking, disliking, or neutral feeling to it. If you have a physical touch, there'll be an instant liking, disliking, neutral. You hear a sound, taste something, have a thought. Any sensory experience is immediately followed by pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, or like liking, disliking, neutral. And then that can be elaborated into something, a more elaborate emotion of, like, say, desire or aversion or ill will. But this, and the Pali term for this is Vedana. And so that's our very first reaction. So this is the second focus of mindfulness, is Vedana, or feeling tone. Next are mind states, and they're sort of in 2 categories. The first category are basically the hindrances. And then the 4th focus of mindfulness are what are known as dhammas, or truths. You've probably, most of you, heard of the 4 noble truths, the basic sort of teaching of the Buddha. So it's the truth of cause and effect. Because of this, that happens. Because of desire, we have suffering. So that's the fourth focus. Now, you can ask the question, why do we care about where we focus our mindfulness? What's the purpose of focusing our mindfulness? And the purpose is to develop this samadhi, this stillness of the mind. And the reason we want to do this is because once our mind is stilled, it goes into these jhana states. When we emerge, our mind has such clarity that we can see these truths. And it's the seeing of these truths that brings us to enlightenment or awakening. So extremely important. And if we look at the sequence of the five indriyas, we start with faith, then we go to energy, then mindfulness, then samadhi. So the mindfulness is leading to the samadhi, the stillness, and then the final one is wisdom, the seeing of these truths that lead to enlightenment. And you see this same sequence, almost the same sequence in the Noble Eightfold Path. It's in the sort of middle where you have, instead of energy, you have effort. And I'll talk about that in a minute. You have effort, you have mindfulness, and then you have samadhi. Okay, and so now if we understand why we're doing this focus, then you can ask, well, how? How does this work? How does mindfulness lead to samadhi? And it's by letting go of the final bits of hindrances. When we're at this stage of the path, when we get to this point in our practice, then our hindrances are just in a subtle form. And so at this point, when we're employing this kind of mindfulness, we're just trying to get rid of the remaining subtle hindrances. Earlier on in the gradual training, we've got rid of the coarse ones. The coarse ones are where you're harming people with, like yelling at them, hitting them, using weapons, rape, lying, drugs and alcohol that make you heedless so that you do harmful things to self and others. So the first step in the gradual training is morality. So morality sort of takes care of the super gross form of the hindrances. And then the next phase is using the four right efforts. And it's interesting, in the Noble Eightfold Path, the word is effort. In the five indriyas, it's energy. So in effort, there's more striving. So with the four right efforts, we're dealing with sort of the medium strength hindrances. So we've got rid of the gross ones with our morality. Now with our efforts, we're taking care of sort of the medium strength ones. And we're having to do some striving. We're having to make some effort. At the stage now, this sort of mindfulness stage, the word is energy, and energy is something that arises more, it arises naturally out of our practice, out of this whole gradual training. And if you think about it, just think about times when you've been, say, lying in bed and you've got to get up and do something and you don't want to. But you make the effort, like you kind of push yourself, you strive and you push yourself out of bed and you start doing this project or whatever it is that you had in mind. And then you notice that some energy starts to arise. Like you make this effort and then the energy sort of naturally arises. And then it's sort of like you need that effort to overcome the inertia of wanting to stay lying in bed. And then after you've overcome that and you've started doing the project or whatever, some interest arises and then and then this energy arises. So that's the difference between sort of dealing with the hindrances sort of in the middle level hindrances and now dealing with the subtle ones. The middle ones we're having to do some striving. At this point, it's some natural energy that is sort of fueling the process. And this is important because and we're going to talk about this next week, because the next one is samadhi, stillness, and this all comes from letting go. So for striving, that's sort of interfering with letting go. So it's good that we've gone from effort to energy. Okay. I had some other comments here on the medium strength hindrances. We use that effort to do sense restraint. So sense restraint is not being attracted to or repelled by sensory contact. So any sounds, hearing, taste, touch, smells, or thoughts, there's sort of, if we use sense restraint, there's more equanimity to these arising. We're not going, oh, I want that, or this is horrible, I can't stand this. Okay, so in summary, mindfulness or sati is developed by the gradual training. It's then focused on one of the 4 areas of the present moment. And then you remember the teachings, so unwise attention is avoided, which means that the hindrances or suffering doesn't arise. And if the 5 indriyas are strong, our mind is powered along the Noble Eightfold Path. And the goal is to develop samadhi or the jhanas by letting go of the remaining subtle hindrances. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a more detailed look at these 4 focuses, 4 areas of focus. The Satipatthana Sutta, or the 4 focuses of mindfulness teaching, has these 4 focuses, and then there's several sort of exercises within each of the focuses, and there's a ton of them. And what early Buddhism researchers have found is that doing comparative studies, they've realized that translators have added in, they've sort of padded this teaching with other teachings of the Buddha. So they sort of, researchers sort of stripped away a lot of these, and we just sort of are down to the bare bones of what the Buddha probably most likely taught. So I'll just mention those aspects of this sutta. So the first area of focus is the physical body, and most likely the main exercise that the Buddha talks about is the 31 parts of the body. So this is a contemplation where you just focus on, he divides the body into 31 different parts, and there's the nice parts like skin and teeth and hair and nails, but there's also yucky things like poo and urine and snot and saliva, oil and grease. So I think this sutta was mostly directed towards monastics who are choosing to lead a celibate life, but you still have a human body which can get triggered. So this is one of the reasons when you go to a monastery, you want to wear modest clothing because you don't want the poor monastics to get triggered. And so the monastics can sort of focus on all these different aspects of the body to help them not, to deal with this attraction that can come up, which is not what they're wanting to do. So that's the first focus of mindfulness. And there's also not quite as strong, but fairly strong evidence that the contemplation on the 4 elements is also included in this focus. So that's looking at air, water, fire, and air, water, fire, and
Earth.
earth. Thank you. In your body, and then seeing how that's just the same as air, water, fire, and earth out in nature. So just seeing the universality of our bodies and nature. And then this is Aya Himsa's major focus of meditation. So if this is an interest to you, you could, ask her for an interview to discuss this. It's not one that I use, so I'm not that familiar with it. I use the breath, but this is Aya's, so that's great. We have a resource there if you're interested in that as a topic of meditation. Okay, our second focus is the feeling tone, known as Vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And then this is divided into two categories: worldly feeling tones, which are associated with the senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, thinking. And then the unworldly feeling tones that are associated with the jhana states, with samadhi. The third focus are mind states. And as I said, the first half are sort of basically the hindrances. So desire, ill will, delusion. They use the word contracted. So this refers to dullness and drowsiness. And then they use the word distracted, which refers to restlessness and remorse. And then the other set are the positive states: exalted, surpassed, samadhi, and liberated. And the liberated mind is referring to the temporary liberation from the hindrances that we experience when we're in samadhi. The fourth focus are dhammas, so insight into causes and conditions. So the two likely original contemplations in this section are the hindrances, but it's more than just being aware of them as a mind state. It's also being aware of them, as I said, the dhammas are the truths, or looking at the truths of conditionality, of cause and effect. So it's looking at, okay, if this hindrance is at present, what was I doing that caused it to arise? And what you were doing was probably having unwise attention. Understanding that it's suffering. If you don't experience the hindrances as suffering, then there's going to be absolutely no motivation to let go of them. So this part is really, really important, is to see the truth of these things are suffering. That's very important. And then the last part is understanding how the non-arising comes to be. And this we can only know once we've experienced one of the stages of awakening. So awakening isn't just a one-time event. There's 4 levels to full awakening. So you do it in bits and pieces. So at the first stage of awakening, all doubt is completely gone. So then you can see how doubt comes to an end. In the second stage of awakening, desire and ill will are greatly reduced. And then in the third stage of awakening, desire and ill will are gone. So that's 2 more hindrances completely gone. You can see how they come about when you reach those stages of awakening. And then in the final stage of awakening, all the other hindrances are gone. Okay, so that's one aspect of the fourth focus of mindfulness. And then the other exercise within that focus are the 7 factors of awakening. And these are mindfulness, investigation into is what's present wholesome or unwholesome, energy. Remember the difference between effort and energy. This is the sort of naturally arising energy, which leads to joy, which then calms to tranquility, which then drops you into samadhi or the jhanas. And then you experience equanimity, which when you're in the 4th jhana. And it's in the fourth jhana where full awakening is possible. So if you're doing these contemplations, you want to ask, is an awakening factor present? How does it arise? And it's that, and the answer is going to be, through the gradual training and wise attention. And how does it come to full development? And that's going to be through the fourth jhana. As I mentioned, investigation is looking into what is wholesome and what is unwholesome. Or another part of investigation is investigating the teachings of the Buddha. Then these two together, mindfulness and investigation, naturally lead to like energy arising, joy, tranquility, samadhi, and then the equanimity. Now, the good news is you don't have to worry so much about this 4 focuses of mindfulness meditation, because the Buddha said you completely fulfill that teaching by doing breath meditation. So the good news is it's simple. But there are 16 stages to the full breath meditation. It's called the Anapanasati Sutta, and there are 16 steps to it, which sort of mirror the Satipatthana Sutta. Anyway, makes it feel easier. So this summary of the 4 focuses of Sati: physical body, and the 2 exercises are the 31 parts or the 4 elements. Second focus is Vedana. Are things pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And is it worldly or unworldly? The third focus is the mind states. So are there hindrances or exalted states? And then the fourth focus are the Dhammas, which is referring to the truths of cause and effect. And the 2 exercises are the hindrances, looking at the cause and effect of how they come about. And then the 7 factors of awakening, look at the cause and effect of how they come about. So overall summary. Sati, mindfulness, is already established due to the gradual training. And it focuses on either the body, Vedana, mind states, or Dhammas in the present moment, remembering the teachings so you avoid unwise attention, which leads to the hindrances and suffering. And if the 5 indriyas are strong, and the 5 indriyas are faith, energy, sati, mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom, they power us along the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the 8 steps to the end of suffering. And at this particular stage of the path, we're letting go of the subtle hindrances in order to develop samadhi. Now, I was going to go over just 2 little aspects of the Satipatthana Sutta and the Anapanasati, but I forgot my iPad. So I'll just squirt on that one. So the teachings of the Buddha are collected in what's called the Pali Canon. And if you're here in Canmore, we have a copy down in the library. You're not allowed to borrow it, but you can come and sit here and read it. But Bhante Sujato made a huge effort several years ago to put the Pali Canon online. So you go to suttacentral.net and you can read it online. I'll just actually, while I'm doing this, I'll just walk you through it. So that's sort of what it looks like. And then you want to push on a basket of discourses. And then there's a variety of them, long one, the Digha Nikaya, which is the long discourses, Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length ones, linked discourses, that's the Samyutta Nikaya. So it's in themes, so linked themes. And then the numbered discourses, the Anguttara Nikaya. And then the Khuddaka Nikaya is sort of everything else, all the little booklets sort of collected together. So I'm going to, the Satipatthana Sutta is found in two different places, Digha Nikaya, the long discourses 22, and then the middle length sayings, number 10. So I'm going to do it from number, whoops, sorry, I should go back here. Yeah, so if you hit basket of discourses, then all the other books come up. And I just clicked on middle discourses. And then it says middle discourses again. It's a bit confusing because you sort of have to hit titles twice. But you click on that. And then it's divided into the first, second, and third 50. And we want number 10. So that'll be the first 50. And then the first 50 will be, well, actually the first 10 are, oh yeah, it's the first 50, but they're in tens are down here. So then you click, I want 10. So you click the first one and then they're one after another. We'll just scroll down to number 10. Called the Discourse on Mindfulness Meditation, or Satipatthana Sutta. And then they have different translators. I like doing Bhikkhu Sujato because if you click on, there's a little thing up here that says view. And if you click on that, you can get the Pali and the English if you're interested in that. You can either have it side by side or line by line. So I just wanted to just read out the first little bit because there was some confusing terminology that I wanted to clarify. So the Buddha is addressing the monks and or the monastics and says, monastics, the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation are the path to samadhi. He uses the word convergence, but he's meaning samadhi. They are in order to purify sentient beings, to get past sorrow and crying, to make an end of pain and sadness, to discover the system. And what he means by discovering the system is this law of cause and effect. That's what he means by that. And to realize extinguishment, and that's the word he uses for awakening, nibbana, enlightenment. What for? It's when a monastic meditates by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So this means rid of covetousness and displeasure. That's saying that the hindrances are gone, or they're mostly gone. We're just dealing with the little whiffs of them at this point. Now I want to talk about this phrase, keen, aware, and mindful. So you're observing, now this is the first sentence, the first focus, aware, observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful. And then he'll go down and say, observing the feeling tone, keen, aware, and mindful, mind states, keen, aware, and mindful, and then dhammas, keen, aware, and mindful. So Bhikkhu Brahmali said that this phrase is referring to these 5 indriyas, these controlling faculties that power us along the Noble Eightfold Path. So keen, the word is atapa, but he said it's very similar to the word virya, which is the word for energy. So that's our second indriya. And then aware is sampajanya, which means clear comprehension. So it's knowing the purpose of what you're doing, like why am I doing this? And then, is what I'm doing effective? Is it going to achieve my purpose? And I like this little story that I heard from the teachings of Ajahn Chah on the difference between mindfulness and clear comprehension. Because when you read the suttas, the Buddha uses sati sampajanya, like he puts the two words, mindfulness and clear comprehension. They often go together when you're reading the suttas. So what's the difference between, isn't mindful being clearly comprehending? But there's this little bit of a difference that clear comprehension has this aspect of knowing the purpose and is it appropriate what you're doing. And so the little story that Ajahn Chah gives is they had a visiting monk who was more senior than him. So he was leading the line up when the monks were walking into the nearest village to get their alms food, to get their meal for the day. And so this senior monk was very mindfully lifting and placing his feet as they walked along the rice dikes to the village, very mindful, lifting, placing. But then he walked straight past the turnoff to the village. And so Ajahn Chah had to go, psst, psst. Turn left. So he was being mindful, but he wasn't clearly comprehending of why are we walking? We're walking to get food, and we have to turn left to go into the village. So I've always liked that story to sort of keep in my mind, what's the difference between sampajanya, clear comprehension, and sati, mindfulness. And then so keen, aware, and mindful. So the last in this little grouping, we've been talking about what the mindfulness is, just being aware of the present moment. So Ajahn Brahmali said that this is the indriyas. This is referring to the indriyas, even though it's only mentioning two of them. But I like that idea that, this is your power. This is what's going to power you along the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay. And I'm just going to show you in the Anapanasati Sutta where the Buddha says it fulfills the Satipatthana Sutta. So just give me a second. We just have to go to 118. Mindfulness of Breathing, Anapanasati Sutta. And I've got the page number for the book, but let me just quickly go through here. Here we go. Monastics or meditators, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. Mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, or the 4 focuses of mindfulness meditation. So there it is, right from the mouth of the Buddha. And then I'll just go on here for a moment. The 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, fulfill the 7 awakening factors, and the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. And knowledge and freedom refers to full awakening or full enlightenment. Okay. So open it up for discussion.
And it's a small thing, but I want to say it just because it might be important information at some point for somebody. There's at least one sutta that says that one can attain full awakening with only the first jhana. So first, second, third, or fourth are all possibilities, probably depending on how sharp all your other faculties are.
Okay.
It's just good not to set up that expectation.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, I was probably making a quote from Ajahn Brahmali there. Yeah. But thanks for saying that. So you can relax, just do the first job.
It's possible.
Right.
I'm not guaranteeing anything.
Those of us who are just know about this theoretically. Did you have something, Marie? No? Okay. Is this making sense to people?
At times I find it complicated.
Mm.
Like it was a big teaching today, and I go, oh my god, let me see what I do. I think about like it's a big teaching.
Okay. So just relax, think about breathing meditation.
One term that I really like for what you were referring to is the focuses.
Yeah.
Or focuses of
Mhm.
mindfulness, I think.
Yeah.
Another term is the resting places of awareness. And I enjoy that term because it reminds me that mindfulness is not something that's done, or, we're not pushing the mind to observe body. If we do that, it's kind of the wrong energy. So I like resting places of awareness because it encourages the relaxation and the understanding that the mind actually just needs somewhere to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be inevitably one of those four places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because as I mentioned, this energy is it's a naturally arising one. It's the stage before, when we're dealing with sort of stronger hindrances, that we're using effort, which is striving. But by this stage, we're riffing off of energy, which is more automatic. So that's a nice translation. Thank you.
What came to mind when Sarah was sharing that was to substitute, instead of the gradual training, the gentle training, rather than because I'm more of the whip type trainer.
Yeah, well, and sadly, for those of us who started like 30 or more years ago, that's how we were taught, and I think most teachers are coming around and having a different focus. But when we started, it was definitely sit down, don't move, suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a better understanding of the teachings that's being taught to us now.
You think that was more of the influence of the Westerners? Sit down, shut up, and hurry up.
Yeah, I don't know, because they've been my major teachers, right?
Westerners or not?
Westerners have been my major teachers. Yeah, I did do a few retreats with Bhante Piyadasi and Bhante Gunaratana, but yeah, most of my teachers have been Westerners, so I don't have a lot of, and I have never, studied over in Asia, so I don't have anything to compare with.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I was just going to say on the same theme, there's a wonderful lay teacher named Doug Kraft in California, and his Sangha, his community is called Easing Awake. So it's kind of, as you were saying, gentle training, easing awake. So that,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, easy.
yeah.
There might be a mass exodus.
Yeah, one of the ways to bring up joy, like joy translated as piti, is very important in this practice. We need to have joy. And if it's not arising sort of all by itself, you can sort of nudge it along by doing the Anusata meditations, which is the contemplations on the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, generosity, Dewas, and what's the other one?
Your virtue.
Your virtue.
Virtue, yeah, a virtue. And so when I do the Buddha one, I just think, oh, thank you. You went through all that suffering, because the Buddha, at the time of the Buddha, there were a lot of people who were doing these sort of tortuous practices because they thought that was the way to enlightenment. And so it was like, thank you, you did that for us, and found out it didn't work. And then you remember sitting under the rose apple tree and being really relaxed and comfortable and going into jhanas, and then you did that again and became awakened. So it's sort of like you showed us the way to just relax under the rose apple tree and fall into samadhi. So that's one of my contemplations to help bring up joy. Okay, anything else before we end? Okay, so we're on metta. We'll end with a metta contemplation. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loving. May you be calm. May you be safe. May no problems come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no harm come to you. May you meet with spiritual success. May you have the patience, the courage, the strength, the determination, the inner clarity and the wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable problems in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable frustrations in life, and to meet and overcome the inevitable failures in life. May the whole of our hearts be filled with loving friendliness. May every cell of our bodies be filled with loving friendliness. May every level of our consciousness be purified by loving friendliness. May we build a healthy, happy aura of loving friendliness all around us, through which no evil thought, word, or intention, or any form of harm may penetrate, but from which loving friendliness may radiate in all directions. And may we be protected. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Please, Blair, Lynn, Therese, Simon, Russell. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.